Hi guys, I hope you're having a great day. Thanks to the wonderful, sweet Dawn Pleasant who sent me these lovely little lithops from either Home Depot or Lowe's. I can now show you guys a few things. The first thing I'm going to show you today is just a couple different ways that I deal with these guys when I get them. I get questions all of the time about, okay, you know, they look just like this in their picture and it says, what do I do now? Do I water them? Do I repot them? You know, what is the best thing to go with now? And these guys, as you can see, are shriveling up around the edges. They were pretty plump when they arrived, and they started shriveling. The light's kind of being weird here. They started shriveling up a bit the day after. Several of these guys did. There's some Alenopsis and Titanopsis that she sent me as well, and they kind of were shrivelly, and I was a little bit uncertain if they had got nipped by frost, but I don't think so. I think that they just got dried out a little bit, which is awesome. Way better to ship way dry and get dried out a little bit by a heat pack than the other way around. Let's see, which pot do we want to tackle first? I think to show this method, I'm going to do this one. This is the least far along as far as in the stage of developing new leaves. You can see the other pots have various, all have one or two that are putting out new leaves already. So I'll show it on this one. This guy is just finished blooming a little while ago because they're pretty dry, but not so far ago that the leaves are really splitting and opening up. So this tells you he's not super far along in this particular phase. And generally speaking, when we get these guys, we don't want to water them when they are opening and putting out their new sets of leaves. The general kind of advice, rules, however you want to phrase it, I am not a fan of rules whatsoever, but a lot of people talk about it as if it's a rule, is do not water in the winter. And when that kind of changes is if your lithops are not well established. If your lithops have been in the same pot and rooting for a year and have produced a really good root system, then yes, there are some general guidelines which are water more in the summer and water less in the winter, and maybe not at all, depending on where you live and the type of conditions these guys are exposed to. However, when you are, gotta grab my little strainer here. When you are dealing with lithops in the middle of winter and they either come to you bare root or in a mix that you really want to repot like this, the first thing you need to do is check their roots. And with these guys, there's not a lot of new root hair growth, but there is some on the sides that I can see. What you want to look for is kind of fuzzy, you can't see, even if the light was different. I don't think you can see, it's too small. But you kind of want to look for really fuzzy roots, and that lets you know the roots are healthy. If the roots are not healthy on your plant, you have to treat it completely differently than you would a fully established plant, and you have to water it. You cannot leave it bone dry for months on end. You will end up with no root system, and your lithops will just slowly die over the period of 6-8 months, even a year they can last with no roots, and they look kind of okay from the top, but they're really not. So checking the roots is really important when you first get them. Before you ask any questions, before you say what should I do, check the roots first, because that is going to give you some information. Now, to do so, a lot of times we have to kind of get some of this dirt off, and there's several ways to do that. My favorite way is with water, because it's the most gentle on these guys, and a lot of people are afraid of using water to get the dirt off the roots because they think they'll split or they'll overwater it, and you're not supposed to water them this time of year. But taking a really quick rinse is much more gentle on the root system than trying to break up. I mean, this is really hard, you guys, and if I were to break this up even really gently, just try and chip away, I would end up damaging so many of these really fine root hairs. And if possible, we want to keep those alive, because this is what is going to give your lithops a way better chance of survival, is their root system. So don't be afraid of washing them off. We just dry it off right after we do it, we can put them in front of a fan. That's what I usually do. I have a really little fan just for such a time as this, and use warm water. Warm water molecules are moving faster than cold water molecules, which is why it cleans better, which is why it soaks soil better. You don't want hot, but you want nice and warm. Sorry, I'm kind of out of the viewfinder here. Let me lift this up just a little bit. And I usually get the whole root ball soaked first before I turn the sprayer on, because there's no reason to use extra force until needed. And sometimes you don't even need force. Just the weight of this water dribbling, you can see how it's just slowly washing away the soil. And what lithops care about more, which I'm doing this over a strainer incidentally, the little really fine particles get through, which is just fine. I have a garbage disposal. I just don't want any pumice or things that are going to be really hard on my garbage disposal to go down there. So those are going into the strainer here. And I forgot what I was saying now, but this just very slowly and gently, and then you can get any dirt out of any of the cracks, you know, here, just to make them look nice. And then if you need to, you can always turn the sprayer on, which I don't have my faucet nearly on full. And you do not have to get every bit of this soil off. It really depends on if you tend to be an overwater or an underwater, or what kind of soil you want to put them in, and what their roots look like. If their roots are looking really, really poor, then the more soil you can get off so that you can trim them and really see what's going on, the better. So once you get down to kind of a little ball where not much dirt is coming off without effort, then I turn my water up a little bit and just let the sprayer go to town here. Don't let the roots dangle free. Let your hands support them so it's not just blasting them against nothing, because it will tear them off. So let the stream of water be going against your hands like this. And I'm gonna have to turn my garbage disposal on for just a second, sorry. There we go. Alrighty. So what we have here is one double-headed, as you can see there. This one here is a double head, and this one's a single. Now, I could separate these if I want, and to do that, you don't want to grab onto the top here and the top here and pull. You want to grab below onto the root base on both of them and gently pull them apart if you want them apart. I don't really need them apart, as they're all pretty much in the same phase, and they're just gonna go tucked in a little pot, and so I don't really need these guys apart, so I'm not going to do that to just prevent any damage. These guys are going to, the root system, this is pretty average, I would say. Well, this is on the good side of average. A lot of times they can be totally rotten, and that would be sad. But these aren't super, super alive and white, but the ends are, so that lets me know that they are definitely alive, so I don't need to worry about that. If you did this and all of this was just kind of dead and fell off and there wasn't much left, you would want to treat them a little bit different, but this guy has a nice root system, so he's just going to go on a paper towel in front of a little fan to dry off really nicely. I'll leave him overnight at least, which is just mid-afternoon right now, so about 16 hours is what I'm going to just let him dry off really well. And then we will plant this little guy up, and I will continue talking. I actually think I am going to pot those up maybe on a different video. I was going to do these guys all a bit differently, but honestly, with all of these guys, I want to look at their roots before I pot them up, and so I'm going to be doing the exact same thing and rinsing the roots off of the dirt, sorry, off of all of these guys. This guy looks a bit more white and alive. Yeah, these guys have some great tap roots on them. And this guy is quite mushy and may need a drink. He may also be on his way out. He could have gotten a little cold. He looks a little bit translucent, which they can also just look like when they're dehydrated. But I'm going to rinse this guy off. He can absorb a little bit of water while I'm rinsing here, and I will check him tomorrow after he dries out and see if they plumped up at all or not. And this guy oops, I'm out of my camera range again, guys. Sorry about that. Alrighty here. This guy that's kind of soft, he's not squishy at all, he's rubbery, so he's not rotten at all. But he may get separated from the pack and put away in a different pot and kind of babied. He may need a bit more water. The baby on him is quite small, or the new set of leaves. I always wind up calling them babies. I know we always think that we have to be so gentle with these guys, but we really don't. Alrighty, got some stuff to show here. I thought this guy was looking a little extra sad on his leaves. They're a little bit translucent, and you can see he's got some dieback here. It's not really rot as it's firm, and it's only the outer leaves. It doesn't progress to the inside. So it's kind of like a cavity that's just barely through the enamel and not into the, core of your tooth. So he may survive since these outer leaves are on their way out already. But I'm going to have to keep a close eye on this guy and make sure this doesn't develop. Like I said, I'm feeling right here, and the little new set of leaves that you can feel inside of here is nice and firm below this little spot, but still that's something that if you see this, there's a good chance that you're... There we go, that's better. If you see something that looks like this is not a good sign. And you can't tell unless you unpot. So that's, again, one of the main reasons that I say, look at the roots before you decide anything. Because if I would say, oh, this guy's looking really shrivelly on top, from the top, I would give him a drink of water. Even though he's right in the middle of having its new set of leaves, the new set of leaves are really small, you can see, and you would think from the top that it might need a little drink. But with this, no. So he's going to dry out. I'm going to go ahead and separate this guy from the others here, and then we'll look at them. There we go. Okay. These guys are good. You can see the bulge here. This is the new set of leaves bulging out. It's just right up in here. And this top set is, or this top old set is really soft, and that's just fine because the baby is nice and firm right here. This is all really firm at the base. The roots look great, well attached, nothing wrong there. Same with this guy, looks great at the base, no hint of any problems. While I'm doing this video on this one, I'm going to insert some pictures and just describe this right now. I think I have done a video on it previously, but I'm not entirely positive. On lithops like this, which are from Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, etc., or even lithops from a good vendor that have just been stressed at the wrong time, what can happen, and what does happen all the time, is that you get a really nice large lithops, and then when it produces its new set of leaves, instead of being about the same size or slightly bigger, they're way smaller. And they can be way smaller. I don't have... Actually, let me grab a pot and I will show you one. Alrighty, these guys are a great example. These guys are some lithops from last year. So it would have been like the winter of 2016 that I got them. And they were huge. This one in particular was about this big around, like a golf ball. And you can see how much smaller this guy is. He took forever to shed his skin, and it wouldn't split because the guy inside the new set of leaves was so small that it didn't cause the lithops to split. And I will put some photos in showing you what they look like. Some great viewers have sent me photos of lots of their lithops, even when I don't have examples to show. And I'll show what it looks like when the outer leaves just stay over the top of the new set of leaves and don't split off because they're too small to cause the outer leaves to split. So they just kind of stay surrounding them. And it can really take a long time, first off, and really look like your lithops is dying because it just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And what happens is if they're disturbed at the wrong time of year, if the root system wasn't reestablished, if they were watered at the wrong time, not watered at the right time, didn't have enough light. There's many factors. But for any of those reasons, the lithops can get very stressed, and it just doesn't have enough reserves to make a new set of leaves that are the same size or larger like it usually would. In the wild, this can happen when they are have a drought, etc. They just don't have enough oomph to produce a new set of leaves that's the same size. So they produce a much smaller set of leaves, which is obviously a lot better than dying. But if your lithops is doing this, probably the reason is it was abused at some point. And if you've only had it for 6 months or less, likely it wasn't you. Likely it was abuse that happened before you got it. It was overwatered, underwatered, yada yada. But if you've had them in your care and they are producing for, an entire life cycle, so for over a year, and they are producing really small leaves, either they didn't properly recover from the initial trauma or you're doing something wrong, usually. Once in a while, they just produce a slightly smaller set of leaves for who knows why, and all of the rest of them in that pot seem to be happy and one just isn't. But in general, it's because something was wrong and they're stressed. So keep that in mind. If really tiny lithops are coming out, new sets of leaves are coming out, it's probably because your plant was unhappy. And keep in mind that they don't grow a lot over the period of a year until they put a new set of leaves out. And so it's really slow coming back up. To get from this size back up to where it was is going to take a while, even though this is technically a mature lithops. So yeah, keep that in mind, and I will be back in a minute. All right, let's go ahead and check these guys. And see what the base looks like in addition to the roots. I keep focusing on the roots, but like we saw in that one, checking the base is really important too. But there's just really no way when you get brand new lithops to know what you should do with them without checking the root system. Just because it's a certain time of year does not mean you should treat them a certain way. And if someone looks at your lithops just from the top only, when you just got it and haven't had it for a long time, and it's not well established, and tells you water it, don't water it, etc., just because of the time of year, beware. They're probably fairly new growers, which are probably very well-meaning, but it's not good advice when you are just coming into possession of these guys. You need to check their roots, even if you don't wash all of the soil off, even if you just take them out like this and dislodge the soil around the base here to where you can see to where the root starts so that you can make sure there's no rot, and then you just check that there's healthy white root hairs, which this guy actually has some great healthy white root hairs around it, so maybe I won't wash this guy off. I probably will. I really don't want this soil around the base of it because, all right, so yes, I'm going to go there right quick. So if you would just plant this without washing the roots in pumice, then every time you water, this peat heavy soil is going to hold a lot more moisture around the roots than the rest of your potting medium holds, and it's really not a good idea. So even though it seems scary because it's water, you're drying the roots out really fast, they don't have a lot of time to absorb something. It's not dangerous to do to rinse off the roots like this, no matter what time of year it is, as long as you dry them out quickly. And in the long run, it's usually a lot better than leaving the soil that they come in around them. Now, a lot of people ask, if the soil that comes on them is so bad, why do they put it on them? And that's a great question. There's several reasons. One of them is that peat is pretty acidic, and lithops tend to like acidic soil, especially certain varieties. And so, especially the younger ones, it can help them get a faster start. And a lot of these guys are kind of forced to grow really quickly, and the peat facilitates that a bit more than pumice or other mixtures like that. And for fairly short periods of time, or if they are being really properly cared for, this type of a medium can be just fine. And a lot of really experienced growers will start plants in similar type mixes for certain periods of time, etc., for various reasons. So it's not it's not like the nurseries just are idiots and are planting these guys in, let me rinse this off really quick, in soil that is just, you know, a death sentence. It's not a death sentence for these guys, but it makes their care so much easier if we put them into a really loose mix like pumice, or just a really gritty mix of whatever. There's a lot of different mixes that you can try that are really loose and gritty and allow a lot of air and don't hold nearly as much moisture around the roots, especially when we're repotting. Pot size has almost as much to do with your potting medium as the potting medium itself does. So having this much more peat heavy soil with a few lithops in it, this small amount isn't nearly as bad as if we took a 4-inch pot and plopped these guys in it with this type of soil. It would almost be a death sentence. But pot size really matters because it dries out a lot faster in a smaller pot size than it would in a larger pot size. These guys, as I've mentioned many times before, and you probably already know, like being cozy. They like being close in together. I see people saying, oh no, should I separate them when there's still a lot more room in the pot? I mean, all of these could happily go in a 2-inch pot, honestly, and be just fine. So don't worry too much about them being crowded. They really like to be crowded. It's how they multiply, and they form these huge clusters in habitat, and it's really cool, and they like that. So don't put them in too large of a pot. Even with a really good, well-draining mix, too large of a pot can really cause a lot of issues. So keep that in mind. All right, these guys are going to go dry. I'm not going to pull either one of these apart. This one is a double-headed one. Oops. This one's a double-headed one. Those are definitely connected. These are two separate ones, but they're happy, and there's no reason to separate them because most likely this guy will have a smaller set of leaves than he previously did, and this guy is putting out two fairly small sets of leaves as well, so they'll be just fine cozied up. The bases look great on these, so I didn't show too much. They're shriveling, of course, but 'tis the season. That's because these new sets of leaves are coming on. Alrighty, so I think that's it for now. I'm gonna let these guys dry out overnight, and I think I'm gonna do a separate video on potting them up with some different potting mediums and make this it for now. I will add some photos in of various and sundry lithops in various and sundry stages and kind of what's going on with them. And if you have any more questions or want to see some other topic about repotting these guys covered, please let me know in the comments below. And I will talk to you guys soon, and happy growing!